And welcome back to One on One, as promised, Mr. J.D. Boudreaux III. We appreciate you being on One on One.
Thank you very much. It was nice to be here, and it brings back kind of old times, you know.
Yeah. I never forget, just starting out as a fledgling in business, I used to bring all that equipment up to the council room, where now they meet with all the jury members and everything, and setting up the equipment. And you were running the show back then. You were the chairman of the council, but you were police jury president before that.
Right, correct.
But to set the scene, take us, first of all, for those who don't know you well, bring us back to your childhood. Where were you born and what was it like?
Oh, I grew up born and raised rather in Donner, Louisiana, and a lot of people in Terrebonne Parish today don't even know where Donner is. But Donner is on the northwestern end of Terrebonne Parish, very close to the border of Lafourche and Assumption Parish. And at one time, Donner was a thriving town, a sawmill town, and had approximately 2,000 people living there. And at that time, during the sawmill days, it was actually a little bigger than the city of Houma for its day and time, from the turn of the century till about 1930. Sawmill moved away, left a little deserted town of settlers who were the settlers of Donner originally, the Cajun people. And I guess I grew up in a community of about 200 people, and Donner's still thriving today as a little community. Actually, it was actually called Court Rouge, where we live. And Donner was named for the sawmill area, and when the sawmill moved out, Court Rouge eventually became Donner. And that's where we live. It's out on Highway 20 between Shreve and Morgan City. And it's like my son said one time, we were standing in line at the United States White House in Washington, D.C., and my little boy had on a T-shirt that says Stone Mountain, Georgia. And a man told him, he says, asked him, he was standing next to him, he said, "That's where you're from? You're from Georgia?" He said, "No, sir." He said, "I'm from Donner." He said, "Well, where's Donner?" He said, "That's next to Chacahula." And that has been a real standing joke in our family for years. But anyway, it's thriving. It's still there today. And I grew up, it was very, very sleepy. Everybody knew everybody, and most everybody there, Cajun descent, Cajun background. We grew up. We didn't have many things to play with or anything when we were children. We made our own toys, like going hunt rats in the woods and going hunt, and played ball from sun up to sundown in somebody's backyard. But that's how we spent our childhood.
Y'all had Chesters.
We had Chester Cypress Inn. That came into fold, I guess, I would want to say right after World War II, and there was a lot of money out on the street at that one particular time. All the boys were coming back from the war, and this was one of the few restaurants in the entire neighborhood back then. And a lot of people, and they used to call it the Chacahula, and really it's Chacahula in a sense, because by Chacahula runs through Donner. Right. And it was built on by Chacahula. Chacahula starts at Ellendale and runs all the way through Deadwood, all the way until it's in the section with Bayou Black. So.
It was a small, sleepy town, but I remember when you were up there as the chairman. And of course, I didn't know you as the police jury president because I didn't get started till those days. But you were a pretty big deal being up there from that area, being the chairman. Those people down there were proud of the fact that you were up there representing them as the chairman.
Well, I tell you what, that's one of the accomplishments of my life that I really look back at, and I'm really thankful for it. But it's not me, it's the people who I was working with that put me there. I was president of the police jury, and the police jury was basically a complete different government than what we have today as far as getting the work done and this type of thing. Police jurists did it. And when they asked me, the boys had asked me to be president of the police jury. And I took it and went with it and carried that on for a couple of years. Of course, we had a lot of battles because a lot of people wanted that position. I don't know if you can remember it, but eventually I wound up with it for the remaining 2 last years.
Oh, it was like the OK Corral.
I'm telling you, it was.
I remember that, but I remember one thing about you, and I got to give you this compliment, that you were pretty even-keeled. You did, when you ran those meetings, you never knew where you were coming from. You had a good poker face on.
Well, I did my best. And of course, you know, politics are going to be politics, and everybody has to work as a team. If you don't work as a team, it doesn't get done. And that's where numbers come in. Numbers come in to play a factor in that.
Right.
When I got on the police, I'm going to go back to the police jury, Dave,
Right,
because
sure.
that's where I come from. And of course, I can get carried off in some of my thoughts, I guess. But anyway, we got on the police jury. I got on the police jury because I had an agenda, and my agenda at that time was to try to get things that we needed for our community in the northwestern part of Terrebonne Parish. We were lagging, not lacking, but we were lagging in some of the services that some of the other areas had, the other bayou communities, such as Montague, Grand Kaya, Little Kaya. These people had recreation buildings. They had road districts. They had levees and pumps that were put in by the police jury.
Right.
And I wanted to do that. I wanted to bring that to the people. And that was my agenda was set at that. That was my goal, was to get there. And also fire stations and fire department. And I accomplished those things.
And as you pass through
What's that?
today, as you pass through today, you see all those things that you're talking about.
You're right, they're there, and that was my number one aim. And really, when I ran, I was going to only run for 2 terms. But as politics go, you get caught up in the world of it, and you just continue going.
I remember, well, the police jury, y'all really, I guess, had to get state approval for things, and in the consolidated government, with the home rule charter, it became one in itself, so to speak. But you were there for the change. You were there when and I got to ask you, because I always wanted to ask somebody this, when we first brought the TV cameras in to start taping the meetings, how did that change the way government worked?
Oh, it changed the way the meetings were run. I grant you that. We didn't have near as many problems. I'm talking about personality clashes and things. And I think maybe that at that point I wanted to have everybody have a fair say so.
Right.
Let them have their time before the mic, where the people could see what they were trying to do for them too.
I remember, and we got to have a little fun on this show. I remember a couple of instances where, in probably '84, '85, when councilman was just getting used to that TV, and I think it made him a little nervous at times, because I remember some of them saying, the lights are bouncing off my head, and everybody tells me my head's shiny or this and that. And I do remember one councilman one time when they were talking about the bridge off of Prospect, the Green Monster, said it was always open, and it would pile up the traffic because the boats were constantly going through there. One councilman put on his light, and you recognized him, and he says, well, I have a solution to that problem. And everybody said, well, we'd like to hear it. He said, we got all these excavators sitting around the parish doing nothing. If we go get a couple of them escalators and dig about 200 yards in front and in back the bridge and make that bayou deeper, that bridge would never have to open again. I remember I was directing that show, and I'm going, I didn't just hear what I just heard. And I remember all y'all expressions. Y'all were like, y'all were waiting for him to say, I'm just joking.
I remember a lot like that. And I had one incident was on some no parking signs on one side of the street where we put them up, and then the neighborhood didn't like it on that side, so we had to remove them. And another councilman or a police juror might have been at the time said, well, after it was all said and done, he said, well, I make a motion we put them on the other side of the street. And he didn't get a second. But anyway, that's the type of things that went on. Sometimes things pop in your head, you just say it, you know.
One other thing that I learned, deviation. I first learned the word deviation in y'all meetings, and I finally learned I want to deviate from the deviation.
Okay.
I heard that a lot.
Heard that one, yeah.
Yeah, I heard that a lot too.
Heard that a lot.
But what did you learn about local government when you got involved, not only as police jury president, but then chairman? What did you learn that local government, not only very political, but it's a little more complex than people might think?
Oh yeah, it is complex, because you have your local government all the way through is very complex, because you're handling so many different situations. It's not only from drainage to garbage, but it's hospitals and everything else that I can name. Of course, we had that prior to that, but it was a consolidation of the two governments that we had to come together and try to do something with the city of Houma and the outside areas of the parish and try to bring it together. And that today probably still is a hard thing to do, because you do have some differences in there, and you have some differences of opinion about how things ought to be done. But that's probably what I learned, and I learned more, because you're actually running like two budgets, one for the parish and one for the city, but they have to be combined. And it's very hard to do and to get them to come together, but it always works out in the end.
Y'all had some good ones. Y'all had some good meetings, and
yeah.
I'll never forget, Percy Gabriel came up to me one day and told me he was against that TV in the room, and I said, well, Mr. Gabriel, why are you against it? He says, well, Martin, he says, I normally get home at 12 o'clock. He said, I like to go shoot pool after the meetings, he says, but my wife's watching the meetings now, so if they end at 9:30, I better be home at 9:35.
Yeah, that sounds like Percy Gabriel.
But you had some characters on there.
Yeah, we did. And I'll tell you what, it was a change in times, not only for Terrebonne Parish, but it was a change in time for our entire communities. That was at the type of that was when the integration came in, and it came in throughout the parish. It came into our government, and it's probably the greatest or best thing that's ever happened to us, because it's given us another section of people that can come in and give to us and come up with some good stuff. I'll give you some examples of that. Was when that was police jury. That was right. Police jury. I keep going back to that, because
no,
I guess
fine.
basically because I am a police jury at heart. You know, from the beginning, that's how I came here. But it changed the way of politics locally. It changed it different, because everybody could vote. Everybody could come up and vote, and every vote had to be counted.
Basically, you were like the parish president is today.
That's correct.
That's what your role was.
Right, correct.
As president of that police jury.
Right.
Because it just wasn't worried about Council District 1
right,
or 2 or 3,
correct, yeah.
Where that sort of drives me a little banana sometimes, going like, people are worried about their district, but how about the whole parish? You know?
Yeah,
that's the parish president.
You do that. The parish president has to do that.
Right.
The parish president does. And of course, I was a leader in my community, and I'll tell you what, I had some hard decisions to make. I'll give you one right off the bat that I can think right off the top of my head. Was that channel on the western end of the parish that we have, the Deepwater Channel
right.
that comes into Amelia and comes into Gibson.
Sure.
And of course, you're looking at business, you're looking at putting people to work, and I represented those people. Well, this end of the parish, I call it, Houma, and down the bayous, they were basically against the channel, and I had to be for it, because I was representing the people, and then the people who work there, and also people who live there, right. You know, who wanted it. So, but it was a hard decision. I think the police jury at the time voted to join a suit with someone to sue them to stop it, but eventually it got done. And I look back at that now, and we needed it. That was some 30 years ago. I'm
right.
talking about 30, 35 years ago. And we needed it at the time. But today, in the western end of Terrebonne Parish, the channel that coming up to Gibson is sparsely used by anybody. There's a few businesses in right. there, but it's not like it was. Avondale Shipyard was in there.
Right.
They needed it for what they were building it. McDermott, I think, is coming back at the Amelia Yard, and they need it for what they're doing. But it was very hard. And then when I saw Avondale close, that's when my heart kind of sunk, right. because I knew that was 300 to 400, 500 people didn't have a job, and they had to find jobs elsewhere.
What was the most important decision that you chaired for the good of the parish, in your opinion? Either as a police jury president or as the chairman of the council?
Oh, I guess I would have to say it. Yeah. We did a lot of important
You were definitely
things.
there for the hospital.
For the hospital, correct. Oh yeah, I guess number one, for the health and well-being of the people of the parish, probably the hospital. Other particular things are some of the drainage projects yeah. that we put through. The sewage program started off real good for Terrebonne Parish. It got stopped midway, and today some of the areas are lacking for sewage because the program was kind of cut short. But those two things were really important. We need both of them. Today we have to have different levies than what we put in.
Right.
And I find this, that the outlying areas, like where I live today, we are lacking because some of the things have not been brought forward out in outlying areas. Some areas have not had any capital improvement programs since the police jury system, from what I can see, other than maybe blacktopping of roads or that type of thing. I know it's like that where I live.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's that way down the bayous down there. Of course, now they're trying to correct the drainage problem, make hurricane levees. It needs to be done, has to be done if Terrebonne Parish as a whole is going to continue. Because eventually where I live, it's going to hit us too. No matter, because we're losing shoreline, it's coming in.
Right.
It has to be blocked. So it's going to eventually get us all the way to Thibodeau. You know?
And I guess I've been a pretty big advocate pushing for those levee systems because I see it moving further north, and it's no longer a north-south issue.
It's not, correct.
In this parish. Give me your thoughts on how it's changed over the years. We used to have barrier islands.
Yeah, well, we did have barrier islands. I can give you just I've never been out to our barrier islands. I've flew over them. In a helicopter and that type of thing, see them. And I haven't been out in the last few years, but I've seen Grand Isle, how it's changed. It's good. That island's getting smaller and smaller, and because I've been there, the islands on the other side, from what I understand, are getting smaller. But I have seen in my lifetime. I was a fisherman. I still like to fish whenever I have the time to do it. Since I retired, I don't know how I ever worked. I got too much to do. But I used to fish out of Dulac, and we put down at the Irv's Landing. I guess I started fishing there maybe back in the 70s, and we had so many more canals that were canals. And today, that's all marshland now, not marshland, but waterland. And some of the canals and bayous we used to go in are filled with silt and filled with marsh that has been pushed in. So I've seen the deterioration myself, and I haven't been there in about 5 years, and it's like 5 years ago I saw the difference.
Did you ever think years later that we'd be talking about putting levees all around Terrebonne Parish?
No, I never did. I had a duck lease. This was prior to me getting on the police jury. I hunted too, and a group. I worked for McDermott, by the way, in my earlier years. I worked for them for almost 15 years. And a group of us had leased a piece of property back at Shell Oil Company on Bayou Black. And it was down the Shell Barge Canal, and right at the very end of the cypress trees where the marshland started, we could park our boats on the side of the bayou, of the canal, get our little pirogues, put them on our head, walk across to our blinds, to our duck blinds. Today I can take my boat and run my boat right over it. My outboard motor, right over it. It's gone. There's no more marsh.
And like you said, Donner and Chackahoola and those areas, that's not the south.
Well,
that's the northwestern part of the parish.
That's right.
And there's danger of water.
Right. I'll say this too: the parish, and I think that was under Mr. Barry Baumeland's administration. They installed a barge that could be closed and opened.
Right.
In Bayou Black, close to the channel area. And I saw what it did during Rita with my own 2 eyes, and I sent some of the neighbors to go look at it because they said, "Oh, it ain't gonna do no good." Some people said, "Oh, that's just a bunch of money spent for nothing." Well, water did come up from the Intercoastal Canal over the marshland through Bayou Pinchin, Lake Pinchin, over the marshlands into Gibson, and came into people's backyards. The only thing stopped it was the Bayou Black Ridge on the south side, which is 182 now. Right. It stopped it, but had not the barge been in there, it would have come up Bayou Black, and it would have come into Donner, Chackahoola, and Shreva, and possibly could have even inundated some of our drainage systems that we have there because they're small levees. Right. And I went to see it, and there was about a 2.5 foot difference on that barge that was sunk in Bayou Black. On the outward side was about 2.5 feet higher than the inward side.
You do to relax nowadays?
We travel. I've retired about 6 years ago, and we decided that my wife was a school teacher too, and by the way, and we both retired at the same time. I believe within 7 days of each other. And we decided that that's what we wanted to do, take a few years out of our life and travel and see the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and wherever life would bring us. We bought a travel trailer back in 1997 to see if we would like that lifestyle. Right. To pull with the truck, something that didn't cost so much, So, and We did that for 3 years, and we decided that was the way we were going to go. So we traded our thing in, bought us an RV, and that's what we've been traveling.
You got to have an understanding wife as long as you spend in politics, huh?
That's right. Yeah, very much so. Let me tell you, because boy, they gave up a lot for me, and I do realize it. You know, the kids did. I wasn't there doing the band days, and I was off doing something at night. They had stuff at school. My wife took care of all of that, and thank God she did.
Right.
And she stuck by my side through all the years. You know, yeah, very, very good wife.
And I always ask this question as we get to the end of the interview, but if I went to, if Mr. Dewey was still there, Mr. Charles Dewey, or if I went to Barry Bonvalet, or anybody that served with you, and then I went to your family, and then I said, one word, y'all got to tell me what you think of J.D. Boudreaux. What's the one word you'd hope they'd say?
I just hope that I would be considered kind and understanding of their problems and wanted to help them, because that has been me. That's help anybody I can.
Well, I got to say in closing, as a young business owner in television when I was just getting started, and y'all were larger than life to me in those days. You always had the respect to come in, shake my hand, wish me luck, but what I most gathered from you was the way you conducted the meetings with an even tone, with fairness, and although you had certain stances you took, it never seemed like you were just ramming it down everybody's throat. You gave them an opportunity to speak.
That's correct, yeah. I tried to do it. And I keep trying to do that today. You know, I'm on a board now. I'm on the South Louisiana Electric Corporation, well, what you call it, an electric company.
Yeah.
You know, and I try to do the same thing with the people that I represent today. And it's nice to get back in the public eye, in a sense, to have somebody call you up on the telephone and say, I got a problem, can you help me?
Yeah.
It makes me feel good.
Well, I appreciate you coming in. We do these interviews often, and I wasn't going to go through this program without getting you up here sooner or later.
Thank you.
And thank you for what you've done for the parish of Terrebonne.
Thank you. Appreciate it.